God of the universe, maker of the stars. Who am I that you would know my name?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 78 of Life on Purpose with myself, Alex Stiles, and the founder, Mike Clayton.
The original founder. I sound like the Sam Cathy from Chick-fil-A there.
Yeah, ate entirely too much Chick-fil-A over the last 3 days.
Oh yeah, you've as you said, you've had a little bit of a difficult time there. People you just have people they get sick to see you, not sick of seeing you.
This is true. This is true. I actually tell people when they do get better and they're ready to leave the ICU and they get grumpy, I'm like, I am so happy that you are feeling well enough you can actually be grumpy with me. Like it's good. I don't take it personal when they're finally well enough to be tired of seeing me. So yeah. And yeah, had been a crazy few days. Prayers for the nurses and the families, particularly at the hospital, particularly in the neuro intensive care unit. There's the Chick-fil-A comment is because there's a Chick-fil-A inside the hospital, and that's popular in there not because it's fantastic, but because it's a sandwich in a bag, and it's warm, and you can eat it with one hand and chart with the other.
Okay.
Yes, it's great. It's great. But yeah, prayers for the families. It's definitely been a terribly rough week for a lot of people.
Okay. Good. Well, appreciate the fact that you were there. I know it's not easy, but I do appreciate the fact that you are there ministering to people. I know in a way that probably a lot of people are never really ministered to. So thank you.
Thank you. So, what are we talking about this evening, sir?
Well, I think let's go to something that happened a couple days ago. Now we're recording on Wednesday night, which is not normal because usually we're on Monday or Tuesday, but because of your schedule. Right. So yesterday on the Hebrew calendar was the day called the 9th of Av. Now, this was a day in Israel that probably not a lot of people slept much in that day because of the threats from Iran. You know, you think about think about your life and how good we have it sometimes. I was many years ago, I was in Israel. It was during the Second Intifada. This was between the years of 2000 and about 2004. I was leading a tour, and this is when things are blowing up. People are blowing up Sbarro pizzerias, Moment Cafe, hotels, buses, all kinds of things. And there was a constant barrage of terrorist activity coming up from the south into a town on the border called Gilo. Well, we ended up taking our group out there, and we were going to be, we went and this is just a beautiful memory for me. Kathy was there with me, and we had scheduled to go to a school. And so, you know, being who we are, we went to the store before we left and bought like 2 duffel bags full of teddy bears. And we go into the school with 2 duffel bags full of teddy bears to hand out to these children. And of course, you know, we're like, you know, best friends from the beginning when you get a teddy bear. Well, ended up some of our guys go out on the basketball court and they're playing soccer with the children. And you look, and there's this concrete wall around the basketball court, which is about 8 feet tall, and above that is razor wire. All the rooms facing that area had sandbags to keep bullets from flying into the schools. And it was just a go away little thing there, however that happens. It was just a beautiful day. But that night I'm at the Renaissance Hotel in Jerusalem, And I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I start hearing the Cobra fire, the helicopter fire and things, down in that area. And as I'm laying there, I start complaining to myself.
Mhm.
Now I'm 6'2", and European beds aren't. Okay.
Right.
So I'm used to, feet hanging off the, one end, head hanging off the other end. And I'm laying there in my bed, and I start complaining.
Mm.
That thing that, I mean, I'm probably
I'm
the
very
only one
good at
that
that.
does that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No.
But
No.
I start complaining about this bed being too short. And then I start hearing the Cobra gunfire in the distance. And I think of the children that we had just been with that day that are trying to go to sleep in a bomb shelter.
Mm.
We were told that some of those children had not slept in their own bed for 6 months.
Mm.
Sometimes you get slapped with reality in life, don't you, Alex?
Oh, heavens, yes. Absolutely. And it becomes especially hard when those slaps come from things that you've, in directions that you've never pondered.
Mm-hmm.
I see this extensively, right? I wear this, this little necklace. Some of y'all have seen that says, memento mori, means, remember that you will die or contemplate death
Mm.
in a manner that makes you realize that every moment is precious and every person you are with is precious because we
Mm.
don't have them forever. Uh, but obviously, I see an extensive amount of death, and it is an incredibly common thing where, grandma's 93 and she's in the hospital bed, and they're like, I just don't understand how she could possibly be dying. And right. And like, you have never pondered that they're 90 with like 6 different severe medical conditions and they might be passing soon? But it's truth, people don't.
No.
They don't want, we don't want to ponder the uncomfortable things in life, but
Mhm.
sometimes pondering the uncomfortable things in life will make you realize just how much you are blessed.
And sometimes, Alex, pondering the uncomfortable things in life may make you make decisions that can change things.
Yes.
Now, this is where the ninth of Av comes in. The
Okay.
ninth of Av, it is believed this is on the Hebrew calendar, is known as the most tragic day of the year. It's a day of fasting for most Jewish people. And it began, we believe, with the 10 spies coming out of the promised land, out of Canaan, and coming back with a bad report.
Mhm.
Now, let's take it that, and let's bring in a scripture. Okay, funny thing to do on a program called Life on Purpose. In the book of Exodus, Exodus chapter 20 is that chapter on, these are the big ones, the 10 suggestions.
Right.
It's known as the 10 Commandments, but it's actually it's the 10 words. These are 10 revelations from our Creator Himself
Mhm.
of how to love Him with our whole heart and soul and spirit, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And in verse, let's see, what verses I gotta get closer. Verse 5. It's talking about the idols. It says, "You're not to bow down to idols, serve them. For I, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, Adonai, your Elohim, your God, am a jealous God." And I'm going to read out of a better translation of the actual Hebrew. Visiting the sins of the parents to the children of the third and fourth generations. Visiting. Now, David Stern translates this as punishing the children for the sins of the parents. But if we go back, let me teach everyone a very, very basic lesson in biblical understanding. This was
Mhm.
taught to me by Brad Scott of blessed memory. If you look on Blue Letter Bible or somewhere, you can go to and you can find the word that is there. It's got a letter, it's got a number on it, And then you go back and you click, as I do on Blue Letter Bible, click on the first use of that verse in Scripture.
Mhm.
So this word visiting, as Stern translated it, punishing, is Genesis chapter 21, verse 1, which says that God visited Sarah
Hmm.
and she was going to have a son. I mean, once in a while you wonder if children are punishment, but that's another that's another podcast.
Uh,
But he visited her with a revelation that she was going to have a son, and then she did. And so, Alex, is it fair that God would visit your children and your grandchildren for things you did?
yes, because we want to immediately take that in a negative sense
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, well, I'm not, they're not responsible for they're not responsible for my, transgressions, my sins. No, but I am responsible for them,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're 2, 3, 4 generations away from me. So the things that we do have consequences. Our actions have consequences, our
Mm-hmm.
words. The things that we build up in life have repercussions and consequences that extend even beyond our own natural lives. So, absolutely, through several generations. So, the question becomes not why would God visit my descendants for my actions, but more the question comes back to in what manner do I want him to visit?
Mm-hmm.
Because here's a harsh fact. And I don't mean this in a sense of outside of God. None of this world exists outside of God. But even outside of examining it in a spiritual sense, your children and your grandchildren pay for your mistakes.
Yeah. Well, that's
Like
not
if
fair.
no, but it's life. Life isn't very fair, quite
Yeah.
often. Uh,
Wow.
if I go out and I become this, suppose I let myself all fall apart and I become the worst of everything I can be.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose I become this absolute, complete alcoholic. Suppose I completely wreck my finances and we go straight into full poverty and bankruptcy. And then I commit some federal crime. Like I could begin this entire downward spiral where I break my family emotionally, spiritually, financially.
Mm-hmm.
And my children would then have to grow up with, say, a convicted felon of a father who doesn't have a house that they could come to, and who does not then have then their children then don't have a grandfather that they could talk to. Where's
Mm-hmm.
grandpa? Oh, he's in jail.
Yeah.
Even outside, now I'm giving extreme examples here, but even outside of examining it from the actions of God, we can understand that our own actions set up our descendants, our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren for success or failure. And that's just within our own human power to make things better or screw things up.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to put this around to a bit more of a positive side here. We we completely disregard how civilized the world is right now. Yes, there are horrendous things, but the world is currently more civilized than it has ever been in recorded history, in that every single human being out there, pretty much at this moment, is a part of a society.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have been part of a nation. Like when's the last time we had to gather people together and say we're going to build a nation to protect ourselves from other people? No, we were born into nation that had police systems,
Mm-hmm.
medical healthcare systems, fire departments, government. These things didn't spring up. They were built by people who decided to put something together for their children,
Mm-hmm.
for themselves and for themselves also, but specifically to have a safer place for their family. And our contributing and continue sets up our children and their children and their children for a better life. so we have both positive and negative setups and negative consequences for our action. I would dare say that you have no choice but to either affect your descendants positively or negatively.
Yeah, there's, I mean, you know science much better than I do, but there is a concept in this world that creation abhors a vacuum.
Yes, absolutely.
You cannot have a vacuum. It is going to be filled with something.
Mm-hmm.
So our life will affect others either in a positive manner or a negative manner. And
Mm-hmm.
this thing about visiting.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the purpose of the Almighty visiting another generation with the same problem that the previous generation had? I believe it is very simple. So that generation can put an end to it.
Absolutely.
You know, we talk about different sins, and I mean, I can go into things with my father, and you know, I'm not going to do that here on this program. But at some point in time, a decision had to be made. It's the old adage of the buck stops here.
Yes.
That you no longer say, well, you know, I mean, the proverbial cat scratched me when I was 2 years old, and that's why I am what I am, and I'm just going to pass that on to another generation instead of standing up, becoming a man or woman of God, and
Mm-hmm.
saying, thank you that you have visited me
Mm-hmm.
with that which was in my previous generations, so that I may bring that to an end. It doesn't take much. You probably see it all the time. You can be sitting there watching a person in a hospital room that is, you know, they're eating themselves to death, you know, suicide by fork. They
Yep.
are, yeah, yeah. I was just in Walmart. Oh, people that are, you know, in drugs and you know, alcohol and depression and all of these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of saying, I am going to find the cause of this and put an end to it, they go, doctor, what pill can I take?
Right. That's a
There's
serious
no pill
concept.
known to man that can stop something that God is visiting.
This is true.
It can
And you've
cover up the symptoms, but not stop it. Go ahead.
That's exactly where I was going. There's this
Okay.
basic concept in medicine where we train both nurses and doctors. Do not treat the symptoms, treat the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just within earthly knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you cover up the symptoms, the problem just festers and grows. Um, so absolutely, that remains true in all aspects of our life. And people take that verse where he talks about, you know, and I will visit the sins and iniquities upon the up into the, I forget how many generations ahead he says,
The third and fourth generation.
third up into the third and fourth generation. And people take that and they look reverse at it of, oh, he's punishing these people moving forward. Well, like, no, he's trying to tell you that even 3 and 4 generations later, the problem continues until exactly as you say, so that
Mhm.
they can put a stop to it for their third and fourth generations following them
To move forward.
to move forward. Exactly.
Let me give you an example of go back to the 9th of Av. So the 10 spies come back with a bad report. This sets up, you know, the wheels on the bus fall off. When we look at what happened on the 9th of Av, both the first and second temples were destroyed.
Hmm.
We look at the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. There are things of the Inquisitions that are tied to the 9th of Av. We can go to the Holocaust, the Shoah, things that were tied to the 9th of Av. What a lot of people probably don't remember, because we're talking to an audience that hasn't been around quite that long, but it was 19 years ago on the 9th of Av. They were scheduled to take the Jews out of Gaza, Gush Katif. That I was actually there and during this time, 19 years ago. They delayed it for 3 weeks. Jewish soldiers in the IDF, under orders of the government of Ariel Sharon, the prime minister, being pressured by George W. Bush, the president of the United States at the time, IDF soldiers went into Gush Katif, into Gaza, and took Jewish men, women, and children out of their family, out of their homes, displacing them. 19 years later, some of them are still having a hard time getting back on their feet. It doesn't sound right, but that's how it is. And 19 years later, those same children are losing their lives fighting for Gaza. But the most amazing thing that happened yesterday, and this is not going to make it onto the news report, it's probably not going to make it onto Twitter, it's not going to make it onto TikTok or any of that other garbage that people are getting their news from. But yesterday, 3,000 Jews went up on the Temple Mount and openly prayed. You know what they did?
Wow.
They said it's time to stop this. I've got video, Alex, of them kneeling and prostrating themselves on the ground. I have video of Jews going up on the Temple Mount with Israel flags, singing the Hatikvah, the national anthem, praying. This is the first time that Jews have been allowed to pray on the Temple Mount in 1954 years, since the destruction of the Second Temple. And a generation is rising up and saying, it's time to bring this to an end. We need to take strength from some of them and say, regarding what's going on, what may happen in your own lives and in our families and in congregations, whatever, it's time for us to rise up and say, no, this is no longer being passed on to another generation. I'm going to have a backbone and stop it right here.
Absolutely.
While you're thinking,
sorry, yeah, lost in thought there.
no. While you're thinking,
wow.
Good mutual friend of ours, Hanok Young, as we've been talking, he has been on a bulletproof bus in Nablus, modern day Nablus, which is in the scripture is Shechem or Shechem, visiting the tomb of Joseph. And I just got the word that he's now on the Horeb bypass coming back to Modi'in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They risked their own life in a bulletproof bus with IDF escort. I've been in that same area. I went up to Mount Eval a number of years ago in a bulletproof bus with IDF escort. We're talking about armored personnel carrier equipment behind us and in front of us, Jeeps with machine guns, and they're loaded. It was cool, man.
Yeah,
but at midnight Israel time, they put their own lives at risk to go and visit the tomb of the patriarch Joseph. Why? We're putting an end in our generation to the things that have been opposed upon us because of the sins of our fathers.
Absolutely, because otherwise there is no end. And the expression is cliche, but I believe it applies, the idea of a snowball rolling down the hill.
Mhm.
It does not get easier generation to generation to stop something that you don't deal with. Each generation will then face more difficulty in stopping the corruption, the problem, the sin,
Mhm.
whatever it is.
But there's another snowball, to use your analogy.
Yes,
There's
there is.
another snowball. It says, but displaying grace to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and obey my commandments. So, in scripture, there's different ways of looking at what is a generation. Okay. Some say it's 50 years, some say it's 70 years, but with most generations, you see that you have parents that are 20 with
Mhm.
children that are born.
Right.
Okay.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
that you can move that back and forth. But, for somebody to be a grandparent at 40, 45 years old, that's not out of the question. So
Right.
let's just say 20, it's 20 years. Okay. To the 1,000th generation. How many generations how many years is that in the future?
20,000 years. Like, that's on into eternity, presumably. I would be shocked if we were still hanging around that long.
I would too. I would too, because
Yeah.
I don't think Darwin was right. I think that we're going the opposite direction. Because again, I was just at Walmart today, but
Right.
yeah. Um, so into eternity, the snowball that I have a choice either to leave future generations a snowball of destruction
Hmm.
or a snowball of blessing.
Absolutely. Um, one of the truly, you're one, we affect future generations by how we raise and affect our current generation. Like how I raise my children will have effect on how they raise their children and moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
The second part is that we build things and actions that last beyond us, right? So
Mhm.
that's a basic thing throughout. Why do people build sculptures? Why do we build, mausoleums? A lot of the idea that many people study is that we want something that endures beyond ourselves. And many of these things, most of the most amazing things that have been built were made by people who contemplated death and their own mortality.
Mhm.
Look at all of the things contributed by Leonardo da Vinci. He was very much a man who understood a death and future, and was and followed God to the best of his revelation that time. But here's the other idea, and where I'm going with this. The other thing, building things that last beyond us. You and I had a wonderful time the other morning about 5 a.m. You were asleep, but you were also with me
Mm.
because at 5 a.m.
I,
I'm
I, I was trying to think. Wait a minute. When did I
yeah.
see you at 5 a.m.?
You did not,
Okay.
but I did see you. Not to sound like a creep. Oh no, but I'm listening at 5 a.m. on my way to work to a podcast that you had teaching you'd released, I believe, back in 2017, if I recall your
Mm.
statements. I believe you were going through the book of John. I think that was roughly a
Yeah, probably about that. Yeah.
2017,
Yeah.
2017. But you have made things that have endured beyond you. So for one, you've set up your own teachings that are going to outlive you. You speak extensively of Brad Scott,
Mm.
a man I've never met and will not until eternity. But
I'll introduce you.
I look forward to it. Uh, but yet we find many of his teachings
Oh, yeah.
have been influential, not only in that they have affected you, but the books. He wrote several books, right? Or at least many lectures. I have several recorded
Mm-hmm.
lectures I'm working my way through there, but lectures and teachings that have endured beyond. And while I'm on this subject, you shared a story there that really drove this point home in a manner that I never pondered. You were telling us about Elisha and Elijah.
Yeah.
Right. And so you were talking about how the blessings would be doubled.
Mm-hmm.
He would perform twice the miracles.
Mm-hmm.
But when he dies, he's one miracle short of his predecessor.
Yep.
And I loved how you're like, well, somebody probably said, well, there was sin in his life or something
right.
like that. You know, he fell
I
short.
knew he was sinning there in the last days.
Absolutely, right? But then you get along and there's some poor random fellow that nobody seemed to care about. And I say that nobody cared about this guy because they didn't bury this fellow properly. They just threw him in someone else's tomb.
Well, they were being chased by an army, so I mean,
Well,
you know.
fair. They had priorities, right?
Yeah, okay.
They throw a guy, but when the
Yeah.
soldier touches his bones, and the soldier is resurrected.
Yeah.
And what you taught was God is not, our death does not prevent God from using us. You said it better than that, but it stuck with me. You know, miracles being performed or his work being done through us even after our death. And that should honestly take away a little bit of the fear of death. And it's fear of death can be hard to get over. There's many reasons not to fear death. But many reasons, and the same reason that people build these statues and contribute things is wanting something to endure. They don't want everything they've done to just end. They want it to endure, to have made a difference, and know that God can and will, in fact.
It's funny. I was a young man who I've talked to just briefly along the way. I won't give a lot of details here, but I had an opportunity to spend some time with this young man that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. And I've always tried to respect him in various ways when I'd meet him. And we got to spend about 45 minutes together today. And along the way, I love the guy. I mean, I love him because, I said something about, I'm 3 times your age. He said, no, you're not. He said, how old are you? I said, how old do you think I am? He looked at me and goes, 51. And I'm like, I love you. He said, well, how old are you? I said, 66. He said, no, you're not. I said, yeah. He said, no, you're not. And I was about to have to get my driver's license out. And so, I mean, he's like one of my favorite people in the world now. But so we got to spend some time together. And he said, so you're retired, right? I said, no. He said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm in ministry. And he goes, wow, I'm glad I've been watching my mouth around you. And I said something, and he says, yeah, he says, I got this friend of mine the other day. He says, he's like, he's religious, kind of like you, he's religious. That's all he knows. And he said, but we were out somewhere. He said he was cussing everywhere, all over the place. And I said, well, that's why I'm not religious. He just looked at me, and I said, I always tell people to never allow religion to keep them away from a relationship with their creator.
Absolutely.
And he just kind of stared. And so he said, well, what do you do? And so I ended up talking about our podcast, and maybe he'll listen one day. I don't know. I don't push it. I just, okay, throw it out there. And we started talking about the meaning of life. And of course I said, I teach on the 5 questions of life, and he's smart enough to say, well, what are those?
Right.
It's amazing to me, Alex, when I throw that out, how many people don't even ask. Okay. And I said, well, one of the questions of life is, a couple of who am I and where am I from? He says, I've been asking myself that for 2 years. So I took him to a grave. I took him to, I said, you ever been to a cemetery? Well, it's been a long time. And I took him through just kind of step by step and let him think through some things. And I finally said, so, what's on a tombstone? He was telling me name and stuff. And I said, yeah, you're right and all that, but what's the most important thing? What is the most significant thing on that tombstone? He's like, I don't know. And he said, the dates. I said, man, not exactly. I says the dash between the two, because that signifies your life and what you did and what you left to others. And he's just looking at me like, I don't know what this is, I don't know if this is a train coming at me, but I think I need to spend a little bit more time with this guy, you know, because people don't understand that if you live for the moment, you're probably going to live a pretty shallow life.
Yes, and if you're not real careful, life is going to be that thing that happens while you're trying to figure out what you're going to do when you grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to turn around and life is going to have happened to you while you've just kept promising yourself the whole time that what things you would do, what you
Oh,
would
yeah.
do for God, what you would do with your family.
It's funny. I met my wife, as you know, in Alaska. I went up there in the Army, and I get in conversations with people as I do. And a lot of times I like to say, well, they're like, well, where are you from? Okay. Florida and everything. Well, I spent 7 years in Alaska, and here's a funny thing that happens more often than not, Alex, is people will say to me, I've always wanted to go to Alaska.
Hmm.
And sometimes that person's like, 75 years old. And I'll say, well, why?
Do you ever want to be like, tick, 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 bro? You're running out of time.
Yeah. It's, you got less years ahead than you did behind,
Mm, hmm
But what they just said is, I've always thought about it.
hmm.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of things in life that people think about doing,
Yes.
but never put the energy out to do it.
Hmm.
And that is, by the way, probably a sin of their ancestors. Procrastination,
Yes.
putting things off. Well, my mother was always late to and my mother wasn't, because she taught me to be on time because her mother taught her to be on time. And in my life, if I'm not like 10 minutes early, I'm either late or dead. When I tell you I'm going to be there on time, it's
Mhm.
just going to happen. And that's a blessing that I was given.
Yes.
But I know
Absolutely.
other people, well, yeah, we might as well tell them 7:30, and then we're going to start at 8, because they're always going to be a half an hour late because their parents
Yes.
were.
Yes.
But sometime you got to quit. You got to quit making excuses for yourself, and say, no, I'm bringing an end to these things so that I
Yes.
can give a blessing unto future generations.
Yes. Absolutely. Um, it, it's and it's the little things I think that
Mhm.
are not little. Um, you talk about showing being on time for something. That's not little. Not when you're looking at work, family. Uh, uh, you know, not getting whether your boss ever considers you for promotion. Uh, right. Uh, um, these even something as simple as teaching your children to be on time, teaching your children to be honest, being honest yourself, being on time yourself, being
Mhm.
trying to not spit hate back out to someone who spits hate at you, to teaching them to be calm in the middle of chaos. Um, can be the greatest blessing you can give someone out. I find numerous times as charge charge nurse
Let's try that again. Charge nurse.
we're blessed with a number of different new graduates in our unit, and I'm like, I don't know why you picked this, but couldn't get a job at Walmart. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, anyway, right. But yeah, thank you anyway. And so I've been with some truly amazing.
Looks like our internet connection is getting a little bit on the unstable side here. So I guess that means we're probably needing to bring this to an end. See if it picks
Uh,
up. There you are.
Now you can hear me now.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. I find people in the ICU, they're fine, and then suddenly they start dying. It happens.
Mhm.
It's a Tuesday. And I find the greatest thing I can bring to most of these times is that I'm calm.
Yeah.
And then the greatest thing I found when I teach my fellow nurses when I've had training these nurses is to train them to then be calm.
Hmm.
And that's not little. Like, oh, that's whatever. What's the matter whether you're calm if you get the job done? Like, it's little, but it's not a little thing. And that can be universal in life across so many realities in your life and so many aspects.
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking that, a calm nurse and teaching others to be calm may give others life instead of, everybody panicking. I'm just I haven't spent a lot of time in, where you're at, but I've spent enough time to know that a bunch of panicking medical personnel is not a good thing.
Nope. No. There's no crying in baseball. There's no panicking in the ICU.
Yeah. Okay. Well said. And with that, we'll give it over to the internet because it's not helping us right now. And the good news is, I think I get to see you on Shabbat, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Hey,
Yes,
you made my
looking
week,
forward to
man.
it.
You just made my
Yeah,
week.
looking forward to it.
All right, good deal. Well, so think about it, folks. What are you passing on? What gift are you giving to future generations? Are you giving are you giving them a gift of blessing or a gift of curses? The choice is up to you, and it's up to you right now of what will you give to your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and to generations to come. So, something to think about until next week. Alex, thank you so much. Go take a nap.
I intend to. Make it about an 8-hour one. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. See you, man.
Take care.
Who am I that you would know my name? What kind of love would walk